Well, guys, welcome back once again to the Proclaim podcast, where we're just enjoying what God's doing through this ministry. Looking forward to the days ahead as we continue it. And today we continue another interview. And as you can see at the table, we've got our most special of guests so far, I guess you could say, and our senior pastor, Chris Guffey. By the way, I'm Bradley Cruz, the associate pastor here. We got Tanner, our worship pastor, and Miss Cam, our women's ministry leader, and as we said the other day, our young adults extraordinaire, right? So, but yeah, today we're joined by the man himself, right?
Yeah, we've all gone, so now you're in the hot seat.
Semi-happy to be here.
Semi-happy. That makes sense. Well, as we get ready to get into it, before we get too deep into everything, so real quick, we got a lot of new folks in the church, new faces that are joining, and we got a lot of folks that listen to this podcast that don't even come to First Baptist Blakely. So just real quick, just tell us about you, your family, where you're from, and all that good stuff, and then we'll get into the deeper stuff in a minute.
Yeah, I should start by saying that I've tried to put this podcast off for a bit. Been trying to figure out a way to finagle my way out of it, because normally I'm the guy who's leading the discussion, asking the questions, and today I get the opportunity to have no idea where you guys are going to go in the next few moments. Bradley sent me some notes of questions that you guys have in mind, and I did my best not to look at them. So we'll see how this goes over the next few minutes. But married, Miss Kelly, love my life, 3 kids, 2 dogs, 1 cat. Had 3 cats at one point, but down to 1. So not sure where the other 2 are at. But if you have them out there, you don't need to return them. We're fine with it. But, we're pretty simple, everyday, ordinary human beings. I think growing up in the church, you kind of get this view of pastors as maybe untouchable, so to speak, or they're just kind of out there. And, I think for most of my life, I've done the very best I could to just be who I am, good, bad, or indifferent. And so we kind of let folks in. And so anybody who spent any amount of time with us probably feels like they know us. And we're just, we are who we are. There's nothing particularly special about us except for what we have in Christ, and that's it. And that's true of us. That's true of our family. We go through the normal everyday struggles that every family goes through. We go through the same ups and downs that everybody goes through. And we're just a pretty normal everyday family. We like living out in the middle of nowhere, so to speak. We like owning our own little piece of dirt, and we've gone from city folk to country folk, if that's how you say it. And we're just pretty ordinary or normal people. And if you've been around us at all, you pretty much already know us. But moved here from Missouri. I know we're going to be talking about that as we go along. But moved here from Missouri. And I get asked all the time, folks from Missouri, like, what are the people like down there? They're people. People are people. It doesn't really matter what part of the world you live in. We may talk a little different, enunciate a little bit different, but we are mostly the same struggles, same ups and downs, same stations of life, so to speak. And so what you see is what you kind of get with the Guffeys, and that's about it.
I don't know about that, because you tend to blow me away every single day. New things every day.
Stop trying to get a raise.
I didn't mean that as a compliment.
Even worse. Perfect.
No, that's good stuff. Before we get into the deeper stuff, kind of just to ease off the nerves a little bit, I guess you could say, because I'm real nervous sitting here next to the senior pastor.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah. I know you love to golf. We've spent a lot of time together on the golf course.
Yeah.
We can talk about how those rounds ended and my winnings, but before that, I'd like that. Just a little fun fact before. I know before you come here, you were a head coach for a women's golf team. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Speak a little on that.
So grew up. My grandpa introduced me to the game of golf. I don't know how old I was. I was young. 4 or 5, something like that. I can remember my very first set of golf clubs were a set of Rams from the 1960s that he had cut down, had the original leather grip that you actually wrapped instead of slid on. And he cut them down and basically said, if you can hit these, you can hit anything. And played with a persimmon 3-wood until I was a junior in high school. And because, I'm that old. But I got introduced to the game early on in life. Fell in love with the game. I like what the game teaches. I think some of what I could say is true of most individual sports. I grew up in a small town, and I like to say that I was good enough to start on a bad team all 4 years and in every sport that I played. When you graduate in a high school with a graduating class of 91, it's not like there's a bunch of superior athletes everywhere. And so played baseball, ran track. We didn't have football, so I didn't do that. Did have 1 year of soccer because some friends and I were trying to make sure that we got elected into the Altamont High School Hall of Fame, and you had to have a fifth sport letter.
Okay.
And so my senior year, a group of us started a soccer team. We lost every game. In fact, in the state championship rounds, when you get to at that time it was called regionals, I believe the score was something like 18-1. I think I'm quite certain that I was the person who scored the goal. It was either that game or another game. I had one all year long, and that was mainly luck. And I was offsides, but the ref didn't call it, so it didn't matter. But anyway, I love team sports, but something about individual sports, something about golf specifically, really teaches life. I used to tell students that if you're having a bad day and you're playing on a basketball team, coach can take you out of the game, put you on the bench, or if you're having an off shooting night, well, then you just pass the ball more. You play good defense. If you're having a bad day on the golf course, you're going to have a bad day for 5 hours, right? You just have to figure out a way, learn how to maneuver through that, do the best you can with whatever you happen to have on that particular day. But at the same time, then there's the success side of things. Like, I love golf because if you succeed on the basketball court, there are at least 4 other people who get credit for that success. Yeah. And you say, hey, we did this as a team. If you succeed on the golf course, nobody else gets to take that credit. Like, you get to say, I did this, and there's this very fulfilling satisfaction of saying, man, I did this, nobody bailed me out. Nobody else helped me. And then there's just kind of the moral side of golf, where you're calling your own penalties, you're policing yourself, all of those things. It's a game of integrity and honor. And so for all those reasons, I just really fell in love with golf. Intended to pursue a career in golf for a significant portion of my life. Unfortunately, I realized that I was not good enough to do that. And so I'm sure we'll talk about this when I talk about going into the ministry, but like, you just kind of reach a point where hey, that's not God's direction in my life, and so on and so forth. And so kind of set the game to the side for a while. I suppose it was a station of life or a situation of life, whatever you want to call it, but just kind of set the game to the side for a while. And then a number of years ago, when we were pastoring in Missouri, a somewhat of a local legend coach, he'd coached for 27 years, won a couple state championships. That success had been 30 years previous or 20 years previous, but he was certainly revered because it's not like, we were winning a lot of state championships in anything. Yeah. Decided to retire, and he and I had played some golf, and we had a couple of folks in our church whose kids were on the golf team, and whether it was through conversations with them, whatever it was, one day he picks up the phone and calls me and is like, hey, I think you ought to apply to be a golf coach, because anybody who has met a high school golf coach, most of them are the band teacher, the drama teacher. That's right. They know nothing about the game of golf. And so his fear was that this program he had invested in for 27 years, was about ready to be handed off to, no disrespect, but the weekend hacker. And he wanted to make sure that it was that it continued forward. And so he reached out and said, "What do you think about that?" And I thought it sounded like fun. I thought it sounded like a good way to, maybe perhaps meet some people in the community. We were relatively new to the community at that point. So maybe I could use it as a backdoor way to get people to church, get to know some families, things like that. And I thought I would do it for like 3 or 4 years. And the next thing I know, I had this superior athlete that was kind of moving up through junior high that everybody kept telling me about. And I decided, well, maybe I'll stick around for them to come play. Yeah. And then I had a whole bunch of boys, she was going to be on the girls' side, but then I had a bunch of boys that were coming up the ranks and saw an opportunity there. So I just stayed with it patiently until they got into high school. Was fortunate to coach them all 4 years. And then about that time, my son is getting closer and closer to junior high age. And I'm thinking, hey, I really would like to hand this thing off to somebody else. And truthfully, my passion for coaching high school golf had started to wane by that point. Sure. I loved it. I loved every moment of it, so to speak, but there were a lot of moments that you had to really work to love because, if you've been around championship golf and things like that, high school golf is not that. I had a girl shoot 178 one time, and so you kind of suffer through all of those things. True story, absolutely. She won most improved the next year because she got down to 140. And anyway,
shaved 30
shots. Nobody else could do that. But anyway, so I was kind of trying to make my exit. And as I was making my exit, a young lady that I had coached to a state championship, her dad was the athletic director at the college, and he reached out and he's like, "Hey, I need a women's program." And so I said, "Okay, well, we can look into that." And so did that, and then the men's coach was stepping aside, and so then it was, "Hey, I need a director of all golf operations." And so, and I loved college golf. I mean, it is vastly different than high school golf, even though the format of tournaments and things like that is much the same. But every athlete there, even if they are not the best, is taking it serious. There's a work ethic that comes along with it. There's a personal responsibility that comes along with it. In fact, most of my coaching was, fairly. It was pretty limited because most of the kids that I, recruited, at least in year 2, were kids that already had swing coaches and things like that. So what I loved was sitting down in families' homes and trying to convince them that their son or daughter needed to come play golf for me. Yeah. I thought that was fun. Yeah. And then getting to know those students when they were in college, hopefully investing in them, trying to get them prepared for whatever the next season of life was. Just really fell in love with all of that. I'm a next generation guy, and so any opportunity to invest in the next generation is a blast. But would like to clarify the record just a little bit. Tanner has beat me twice. Y'all would think that was 1,000 times. I own the 98% series record, but he's gotten me twice. So
check the books again.
But he makes sure that everybody knows when he has beat me. And he does not let them know when he gets beat. And so
I never say anything. It's just all the on-watchers that are waiting for the answer.
So today I just simply want to acknowledge, yes, you have beat me. If we play more, you'll beat me again. I'm very comfortable with my age and golf game and all of those things. So let's move on.
I agree. I can't
let it go, buddy. Let it go.
Okay.
You're so humble.
Yeah, well, keep practicing.
Kind of going off of that, you mentioned Miss Kelly earlier, and Miss Kelly's from Nebraska.
That's
correct?
Right. Yep.
And you're from Illinois.
That's right.
So, how does someone from Illinois meet someone from Nebraska?
Yeah, so we met in college. I think I've probably told this story at our church before, but met her the very first day of Welcome Week at Southwest Baptist University, which we affectionately called Southwest Bridal University. It's where Southern Baptists go to get married. I was was headed into my freshman year, and Southwest Baptist at that time used to have a policy that you had to come to what they called Welcome Week. And that was like a week before classes started or 4 days before classes started. They would do all of these really dumb, cheesy things to try to get you to make friends at the university so that you had friends on day one. Essentially, everything from recreational games, tug of war, whatever, right? And so Kelly was not in my group or anything like that. I can honestly say that during that Welcome Week, the people that I was forced to be with, I don't think I remained friends with them after those 4 days for the rest of my college career. They were wonderful folks, but they just anyway. But I met Kelly for the first time. I walked into Davis Theater, and we were sitting down because they would have chapel as a part of this regularly throughout the day. Got to bring God into all this mess, and so anyway, we would have chapel, and I walked in and she was sitting in the row in front of me. And I thought, man, that is some of the whitest blonde hair I have ever seen in my life. And I thought, man, most beautiful girl in the world. And truly, I said, to myself, not to anybody else, they'd have thought I was crazy. I'm going to marry that girl, right? And so just thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I did nothing about that fact. Later on that day, I went to Walmart to grab some things, and she was there with her parents walking around. And if you've seen Kelly, meet the parents. Now's a good time to introduce myself, right? But no, if you've seen Kelly, she just kind of has a really distinct, really, really light blonde hair. And so it was easy to pick her out. And so saw her, ran to the aisle over to hide. Next day, saw her again. Next day, we're at chapel, and here she comes in, and I think she might have been maybe behind me that time or something like that. And this trend just kind of keeps going on for 3 or 4 days, like literally everywhere I go. Now, this shows an 18-year-old's mindset. I mean, Bolivar is small. So it's really not that much of a miracle that we keep bumping into each other, right? This is like saying, that I bumped into somebody in Blakely. Of course you did.
In your mind, there's no word.
But in my mind, this was a miracle. And so distinctly that Sunday morning at the end of Welcome Week, I was like, man, if I see this girl today, I made a commitment in my own heart and mind before the Lord. Yeah. If I see this girl today, I am going to go up and I'm going to introduce myself. Because every time we saw each other, contrary to what she says, we locked eyes. You could hear, the lobster singing "Kiss the Girl." Like we had moments, right? So anyway, we go in for chapel that Sunday morning, and here she comes walking in, and she's sitting directly, and I mean directly in front of me at Davis Theater. And I thought, well, you've made a commitment before God, and so you need to introduce yourself. And so I have no idea what the guy preached on that day, what songs were sung in worship, because I spent a solid hour trying to figure out what type of pickup line I would use, and I didn't want to be cheesy and all that. So what I thought was I would use my best skill set, which was humor. And I thought that I would, offer some sort of humorous anecdote to her and that she would respond well to that. And so we get done with chapel, and Davis Theater has these big, wide sections. And so like when you're in the middle, which we were both literally in the middle, you don't know if you're going to exit out to the right or to the left or what. And so we stood up. Here's my opportunity to introduce myself. And she starts to go to the left. And I thought, I'll just go to the right. So I turned to the right to find that my entire row is heading back this direction, and I have to turn around. So now we're walking side by side, 3 foot apart, all the way down the aisle, and I'm rehearsing how I'm going to say this as we pass each chair along the way. And finally, we get to the last chair. It's now or never. And so I turned to her and I was like, hey, wanted to introduce myself. I've been following you around.
No, you did not.
I absolutely did. I thought that would be funny because I knew that she had seen me. And I had seen her and I thought she would find that humorous. As it turns out, our marriage begins with a restraining order. But she just looked at me like, okay. And I don't think she ever gave me her name, and I did not give her my name. I just kind of walked off in sheer embarrassment, right?
As you should.
And so then we did not talk for a year. I would see her around campus from time to time. She was in my English literature class with me. I sat on one side, she sat on the other. Did not ever speak to her again for a year. And then finally, I think I guess it was early into second semester of our sophomore year that I finally got up the courage to reintroduce myself, maybe perhaps hoping that in a year and a half's time she'd forgotten. Whatever it was. And so I did what you did at that time. I sent an email to the school email because I had no other avenue by which to, contact her, but everybody knew. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a story made in Hollywood.
Can you tell us what the email said?
No. I know our email addresses were like something like, cguffey@sbu.edu or something like that. Like you knew what everybody's email was. So I knew her name. Even though she didn't give it to me a year and a half before, I had, through stalking had found out what it was, stalking. And so, but I just sent an email that was like, basically like, you don't know me. We've had a few classes together. How about let's go out on a date, type thing. I don't know. It was a little bit more complex than that, but, she has not responded to that email to this day.
Wow.
2 or 3 weeks went by and, no response. And, as it turned out, that I don't know if I should say friend, but mutual acquaintance of mine happened to be ended up being one of her roommates. And so one day somehow we got on the subject of them picking on me for being the only person at Southwest Bridal University without a girlfriend. They were like, is there anybody you like? And I'm like, yeah, there's this girl that I emailed 3 weeks ago and stalked a year and a half ago, but she doesn't really seem to give me the time of day type thing. And I made some comment and this girl's like, well, she's my roommate. I was like, well, this is getting awkward again, And so anyway, she's like, did you really send her an email? And I was like, yeah. And so she went to her and said, you should check your school email. And so she went and checked her school email, which I had at least given my cell phone number at that time. And so she reached out and she said she didn't know me. She didn't remember me, which I was thankful for.
Yeah.
We didn't discuss the earlier incident until after we were married. But she didn't remember me type thing. And then we scheduled to go on a date, which at Southwest Bridal University, being dirt poor, meant that we were taking some stale bread to feed the ducks at the park. So we did that, and sat and talked. And then I invited her. I had a friend that worked in the St. Louis Cardinals organization who got me tickets to a St. Louis Cardinals game. Nice. I had found out that she loved baseball, being from Nebraska, going to the College World Series. I was like, hey, let's have an official date and let's go to a St. Louis Cardinals game. I left to preach for the weekend on a revival, and we were scheduled to go on Monday. And I got back into my dorm room Sunday night at like midnight, 1 a.m. And I had literally 12 messages on my dormitory phone that she had left that I will not let her live down to this day, where like the first one is like, hey, I've thought about this a little bit and I don't think we should do this. Next message, hey, would you call me back? I don't want you to get the wrong impression. Next one was like, hey, I'm not sure where you're at right now, but and then it all culminates to like the last message, which is my dad says I'm way overthinking all of this. So yeah, let's go to the game. All true. That's all great. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
And so, and then after that, the rest is just history, I swept her off her feet, and she's never looked back.
Amen.
Yeah, that's the inside look at what it's like to be a girl dad.
Yeah.
It's to deal with the the back and forth.
Yeah, I was glad her dad was in my corner. He didn't know me, but I think he remembered me from Walmart.
Oh, you think
Yep.
so?
Yeah.
Saw you run to the next
He saw
aisle.
me run to the next aisle and thought, this is who I want as a future son-in-law, if I had to guess.
Kelly went through all stages of grief waiting for you to.
Just to answer the phone, I guess, you know.
Hard to get, man. That's what we gotta
Earlier
do.
I said I gave my cell phone number. That's not true. I guess cell phones were out at that point. I guess I had given my dormitory number.
Yeah.
And yeah, no. And it's been.
Didn't let her know you were leaving, playing hard to get.
Well, I actually think I did, but I think, you know, I think still to this day, she, you know, has learned to tune me out over the years. And so I think you look back and it started early on in our relationship. She knew that 90% of what I was about to say, unless I was in the pulpit, was just utter foolishness. So just wait until I had a serious look on my face.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So.
Good deal. Well, that's good stuff. I didn't know the whole
was
story.
fun.
I knew some of it. Because
yeah.
when we went, one of the trips we took to Missouri, you took us to the campus there and showed us where you swept her off her feet. And
Yeah,
stuff.
that's right. That's right.
I remember some of it.
I like to tell her that I picked her.
Right. That makes sense.
Out of all of the ladies, I picked her.
Yeah.
I don't tell her that it was between her and, you know, the black lab I had. But you know, it was always her.
Lord bless it. Well, let's do this. Let's turn things a little spiritual now for a moment. So let's
If you want to.
let's take a trip maybe a little bit further back than that even, and you know, just share your personal testimony, like how you came to know the Lord and all.
Yeah, I grew up in church. Most folks know that as a part of our story. I was so blessed. You know, our faith heritage goes way, way, way back. There was a interloping period, at least on one side of the family, where we kind of turned away from the faith. But in my immediate context, both sets of grandparents were godly folks, loved the Lord. My grandparents on my mom's side, they were in a missionary Baptist church that became a Southern Baptist church. It's a different type of missionary Baptist than we have down here, but at Smith Grove Baptist Church, Greenville, Illinois. My grandparents on my dad's side, my grandpa Guffey and grandma Guffey founded a church in their living room called Calvary Baptist Church in Effingham, Illinois, and started with 18 folks. And so my earliest years were spent at Calvary Baptist Church, most of the time, 48 weeks a year. And then when I was with my grandparents on my mom's side at Smith Grove Baptist Church, normally that was in the summertime. I'd go hang out with them for a couple weeks. I think I was probably a bit of a rowdy kid, so my parents just liked to get rid of me for a few weeks. And so I'd do the tour of VBSs and all of that. Yeah. But and then from Calvary Baptist Church, I guess I was in junior high. I think I was in junior high. A number of things happened. Nothing, terrible. Just a number of things that kind of went on at Calvary, and my folks decided it was time that maybe the Lord was just going to use them somewhere else. They were going to go somewhere else. No hard feelings or anything like that. Some of those folks that remember me from those early years, I still talk to. Nothing like that. Just felt like it was time to do something a little bit different in their lives. And so we went from there to Altamont First Baptist Church, which was where we were actually going to school. And so even though my family's business was in Effingham, going to school in Altamont, I actually knew more people really in Altamont than I did in Effingham. And also Effingham at that time was probably 20,000 people, somewhere in that neighborhood, and Altamont was 2,200. And so anyway, so made a profession of faith when I was pretty young. I think I was 7. I might have been 8. I can tell you the pastor. I can tell you the day. I can tell you so many details about that night. The pastor was Brother Jay Bridges. Jay Bridges was a key figure in my very early life, as far as leading me to the faith. Yeah. But my brother had gotten saved a couple years earlier. He's 3 years older than I am, and he had made a profession of faith a few years earlier. And it was the night of the All-Star game, baseball All-Star game. Mm-hmm. We had one TV in our house that got 4 channels, 3 channels, whatever it was, depending on how you rotated the antenna, right?
Oh, yeah.
And for whatever reason, that was the night that Jay Bridges decided to come over and visit with me and sit and talk about Christ with me. My brother was angry that I was getting saved during the All-Star game because he could not watch the All-Star game because we were in the living room where the TV was at.
How selfish.
And I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean,
A little bit of the prodigal son there, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but anyway, that night, to the very best of my ability, I bent my knee, my heart, my soul, and my mind to Christ, and I trusted in Him. Believed that what He did on the cross was sufficient, good enough to pay the penalty for my sin. Jay was so wise in directing my parents, in, just basically saying much of what I say to parents a lot of times, let the kid be in the driver's seat. The kid will tell you whether or not they know the decision that they're making, so on and so forth. Yeah. And so they did that, and I very much understood, to the very best of my ability as a 7-8-year-old kid, I very much understood the decision I was making, and I knew what I was doing. Unfortunately, at 7 or 8, your view and your understanding of what sin is limited, right? It's limited to being disobedient to mom and dad, or having a bad thought, or I don't know. It's very, what we would, as more mature adults, be like, that's not even a big deal. Don't worry about that. It's a very childlike view of what sin is. And so, unfortunately, as my family transitioned from Calvary Baptist to First Baptist of Altamont, there were a lot of things that were kind of going on simultaneously. Part of it was just my rebellious nature. Part of it was a desire to be popular. In a small school, we were not so small that there was no such thing as popular. Because you can have a school that's so small, with 20 in a graduating class, that there's no such thing as popular or unpopular, because you just kind of got to hang out with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But we were in a large school where you kind of find your own little groups. We were right there in that squishy middle, which can be kind of awful for impressionable kids. And I just really wanted to fit in. And it began a transition, I suppose I would say, in my life where there was really no pursuit of Christ. I never really questioned whether I was saved. I never really thought about it. I just, I was a junior high kid coming into high school. I basically thought about one thing all the time. Girls, right? And if my mind was not on girls, it was on sports, right. and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
I dated a girl, not a godly relationship at all, but just dated a girl that couldn't care less about the faith, and always still going to church, right? Always at church every Sunday morning, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, always involved in things. I think from the outside, I think most everybody who, might even be back home that would listen to all this be like, I don't really remember it quite like that, because I think from the outside, it probably looked pretty good for the most part. Maybe that's a figment of my own imagination. Maybe it looked much worse on the outside, but it seemed like it looked okay on the outside. I achieved what I quote unquote wanted, being fairly popular. I wasn't necessarily the most popular kid. I mean, I wasn't elected homecoming king like Tanner, but I was, I was fairly popular. But just, through those seasons, just really, I would like to say that I was totally running away from God, but it was more like I just really never gave much thought to it all. I was just very, ambivalent, for lack of a better way to say it. And if you'd asked me at those moments, hey, are you saved? I would have absolutely said yes. And if you'd asked me, did I believe that what Jesus did on the cross was good enough to pay the penalty for my sin? I would have absolutely said yes, and been sincere and honest in all of those things. But what was the forefront of my mind was, playing sports, and especially as I get into my junior and senior year, playing sports, playing collegiate golf, having, dating whoever was going to be my future wife. Those were the things that consumed me, and really nothing else mattered. I wasn't like partying or anything like that. I don't know. It never really made much sense to me. My folks owned a small business, and so honestly, we spent a lot of time just at work. Yeah. I mean, I worked my entire childhood. I can remember as junior high, they owned a tuxedo company, and so during prom season, I can remember polishing tuxedo shoes until 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning. As a junior high kid to help your parents out. Right. Summertime working in their business. But I was just very, very ambivalent. And then in my junior year, God just used a sequence of events to just break my heart. And I think you look back, and I don't want to go back and relive any of that. I don't, some people talk about high school as the best years. It wasn't that way for me at all.
Same.
Enjoyed it. I can't say I didn't, but it wasn't the best years by any stretch of the imagination. Didn't think at the time it was going to be the best years, but my junior year, God just began to use some circumstances, some situations, namely coming out of a relationship that I'd been in for, 2.5 years, I suppose, seeing that crumble. And I was actually visiting my grandparents one weekend, and I just remember getting back to their house. My cousin and I were real close, and so we were hanging out with some of her friends, and got back to their house on Friday night, and it was late, 11, 12 o'clock, whatever it was. My folks were probably a little too lenient on curfews and things like that, but got back to their house 11, 12 o'clock, whatever it was, and I just laid down, and I remember thinking, I'm unhappy. Yeah. Like there's got to be more to life. There's got to be more to all of this than what I'm experiencing. And a person who was not very emotional, I don't really even remember ever crying before that moment. God just began to break my heart. I laid there pretty much all night long, was praying and didn't know how to pray or what to pray. Even though I'd been in church my entire life, I knew the mechanics, but I didn't even really know what to say to God because I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know where to even start confessing because I didn't really know how far back he wanted me to go, do I put 6 years in here or do I just start with last week? But I just got real broken before the Lord, and that just continued on that entire weekend. Saturday comes along and I am not feeling like getting out and doing anything and kind of going through the motions. I don't want to confess what movie we went and saw that Saturday night because I can remember it. But anyway, we went to a movie with my cousin, and the whole time I'm not even watching the movie. I'm just consumed with this inner turmoil, this weight that is just tearing me up. And so finally that Saturday night, early Sunday morning hours, whatever it was, I just kind of got all out of myself. I finally said everything to the Lord that I felt like I needed to say, and I felt like I had just finally been able to lay the burden down. And I said, I don't know what your plans are for me. I don't know what you want to do in my life. I don't even know what to ask you in this moment, except that I know that how I'm living is not the way you've called me to live. And I need your forgiveness. And whatever it is you want to do in the days ahead, I'll do it. And so I always describe my salvation as much more of a process, you know. And that night, for the first time in years, it felt like the burden, the weight, Psalm 51 moment, you know, cleanse me, purge me, wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Felt like all that weight just finally went away. And I'd like to say at that point that I never struggled with sin from that point on, but the truth is that we have this dead man on our back. And even returning back to school as a junior in high school and, you know, on the following Monday, you know, it takes a while, doesn't it? It takes a while to shed off that old dead man, and I still struggle with him to this day. But it began a process. And then, you know, immediately I knew that I needed to get plugged in somewhere or I was going to revert back.
Right.
And so somehow, some way, I don't even know how I knew about it, but I knew that there was a Baptist church in Effingham that hosted, I don't even know if they still exist, something called 180 that was hosted first and third Saturdays of every month. High schoolers, junior high kids show up. They play video games and pool and play basketball. And, you know, it's a big kind of complex that was set up. And then there would be a band and a speaker. And I thought, this is my avenue to get plugged in, because all the while, and I'm not blaming anything or anybody, but part of that struggle is when we move from Calvary Baptist to First Baptist of Altamont, I go from a youth group, from kids my age, I should say, like 10, 15 of them, to it's me and the Sunday school teacher's daughter. And that's it. And so I didn't have a friend group to be encouraging in any way. And so somehow at 17 years old, I knew, hey, look, you better you better find something, you better find somebody. And so somehow I found this group, and I went, and the next thing you know, I was heavily invested and plugged in, and it started a train of new events in my life.
Amen. That's good stuff.
Yeah, it is. I can relate a lot to just your story and that salvation kind of process, because I think a lot of people, especially around our area, can relate to your testimony and growing up in a church, knowing the truth of Christ, but living very outside of just the intimate relationship that we are invited into. And not really getting to experience that, but not even really understanding that that's what we're offered. And then kind of just going through the motions. But same thing, you know, that kind of junior, senior year, high school, just getting to the, you know, the weight of what even is life? What even is sin? You know, what even is this for? What even is church about kind of aspect? But
I think next generation, I've been a next gen guy most of my ministry, and will be, I think, until the day that I retire. For me, like junior year of high school, sophomore year of college, it's my favorite 4-year span of next generation people to work with, because you're reaching these seminal moments in your life where you start asking questions about, what do I want to do? What do I want to look like? Who do I want to marry? All of those things. And you have a real opportunity to kind of get serious in those moments. And it was a really, really impactful moment in my own life. And so I love investing in others at the same time.
Amen.
I know y'all have, starting the internship after my sophomore year, going into my junior year, y'all were dealing with a little girl who didn't know what to do, what to say yes to. But y'all poured into me so much in that season. And so kind of talking about that, you had this idea of an internship because you value and you respect the, you know, gift that you've been given to pour into the next generation, and you hold that to a serious thing. And I feel like that oftentimes comes from experience of having someone pour into you. So
that's right.
Who, kind of going back to those early years of when it just, the reality of what we have in Christ kind of hit you, who were some of those impactful people that just...
Yeah, I mean, it takes a village, doesn't it? And I could go, you know, way, way back and say in those early formative years, there were countless men and women who taught Sunday school, who taught VBS, who taught, at that time we did RAs, built derby cars with me and all of that stuff. But if I looked at the most kind of serious moments of my life, there's a couple of people I would point to. One would be that when we went to First Baptist in Altamont, for all that maybe we lost and didn't have in going from, a church that I knew everybody, there were kids my age, to a church that was smaller, not as many kids, those types of things. Okay. There was an older gentleman by the name of Bob Atchison. I think his last name was Atchison or Atkinson. I think it's Atchison. And Bob was actually the associate pastor of the church, but he wasn't paid. He was just a lay pastor in the church. He was a retired pastor. And Bob, you have to kind of set the scene of Bob feels called into the ministry, but, with his age and all of those things, he never has opportunity to go to seminary. In fact, I think he had like a sixth grade education. So he spends his entire adult life reading everything he can get his hands on and all of those things, and basically self-trains himself for the ministry all these years, and then retires and decides, hey, we live in Altamont, we'll serve in this local church, because it was at that point a growing church, and so they need some help. So here I am, I'm retired from the ministry, I can come and help. And Bob just, I don't know what it was, but he loved kids. He loved teenagers, and I'm sure that he did a lot of other things in the church, but he very much just attached on to a few of us, and he attached on to me. And it's really him at a fairly early age. I mean, I'm probably 6th or 7th grade in that neighborhood, thinking to myself, well, maybe I should become a Bob. Maybe I should go in the ministry type, conversation, at least that you're having in your own mind. But he invested, and Bob would be somebody I would hold on to for the next, probably at least 10, 15 years. Like I was in seminary classes, and I would call Bob and ask him questions, theological questions about things, saying, I've never heard of this before. What do you think about this? And it was so funny because he was such a real individual, but he typically he'd be like, I've never heard that term. And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of what it means. And I'd explain it to him, and he would be like, yeah, we believe that. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so again, here's a man who had self-taught himself in ministry, never had the privilege of going to Bible college or seminary. And so he didn't care really about the academic terms, but he knew what he believed. He knew what the Bible taught him, and he knew what he believed. And so, he continued to be an influential figure in my life. We didn't talk every week or anything like that, but we talked with regularity. I'd come home. So that's one person. Then probably the two most influential that come up next is I walked through my testimony junior year of high school. I said, hey, I had to find somewhere to plug in. And so this church in Effingham, Illinois is running this 180, and I go and I don't know how they knew. There had to be hundreds of students, or maybe they didn't know, and God was just sovereignly working all this together. But a lady by the name of Carol Donsbach comes walking up to me, and she's like, hey, you look new here. And I'm looking around, and there's 500 kids, and I'm like, how do you know? And at that moment in my life too, I was very much trying to just blend in. I knew I needed to be there. I knew I needed to be invested and plugged into, but I also knew that I really didn't want anybody else to know. Not that I was keeping some big secret, but it was like, I didn't want to be embarrassed. I don't know what it was, but I was kind of trying to blend into the corner. But Miss Carol somehow sees me and is like, hey, I don't think I've seen you before, introduces herself. I finally got rid of her, and a few minutes goes by, and she comes walking back, and she's like, this is my husband, Wayne. And I'm like, oh, great, and she's like, we teach the high school Sunday school class at at New Hope Baptist Church in Effingham. We'd love for you to come. And I'm like, well, that I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. My parents go to church at Altamont. That's where I go to church. My parents will never let me go to New Hope Baptist Church. And we'd heard a lot of evil things about New Hope Baptist Church. So we knew how liberal they were, because they had a praise band and weren't singing out of the hymn book.
Just
and like,
awful.
Yeah, they were awful, right? And so like, I hate to say it, but I even looked at them with a certain amount of suspicion. But they're like, well, that's fine. If you can't come to church, can't come to Sunday school, that's fine. We have a small group. Our high schoolers also come over to our house on Wednesday nights. And so you can come over to that. And so I did say yes to that. Yeah. And so I just, really became a part of that group, even though I wasn't going to church there because my parents wouldn't let me. I became kind of a part of that group. And Carol and Wayne, I mean, there's a special mansion for them in heaven because the amount of stuff they put up with. I mean, high schoolers stop by their house every day. They're raising 3 small kids, and yet here comes Chris Guffey knocking on the door, right? And don't need anything, just want to talk, just want to hang out. Hanging out till 9, 10 o'clock on their couch, which you look back now and you're like, what high schooler wants to go and hang out with a couple of old people raising 3 kids? But I did, and they invested in me. And where Bob might have been my greatest kind of theological influence and putting that sturdy foundation together, Wayne and Carol just loved me to the Lord over and over and over again, and not discrediting any of their theological teachings, but they just loved me through impressionable moments in life. They just loved me to the Lord over and over again through sin, through weakness, and they were just there. And so, those two, or that couple, and then Bob. And then the only other person that I would put really as very high up on the list of having, I could give 1,000 people have invested and played major roles, but the ones who did the most would be my uncle, who just I don't know if he saw something all of those years, but even in the years of sin, still to this day, he and I are very, very close. When the rest of the family didn't understand, he just was there. Yeah. And he's in the ministry in Vandalia, Illinois. He's one who would give me books. He was supportive when I started thinking about going in the ministry. It's him that I talked to about it, even more so than Wayne and Carol and Brother Bob. Like, it was him that, for whatever reason, I had this safe space that I could talk. And so he became a big influence as well.
Yeah, so that is good to hear too, because it's just like myself, and I know we all have this, but it's cool to hear in testimonies how us at a young age, how important that discipleship is, and how important it is to be plugged in, even whenever we don't think we need to be. We got all these other things going on with school and sports and friends and all that, but the sheer importance of being molded by these people of faith, but
faithful folks.
I love how we saw. I mean, we can see the global church at work in your life. It wasn't,
absolutely.
Your discipleship wasn't limited to just where you were.
That's
and
right.
Nobody else could pour into you, but it was, hey, we have this that we can offer for young adults, or our small group that we have outside of a church time. And so,
and not only that, but pastor, Sunday school teacher, family. Like, not necessarily the roll call of what we would always say, hey, these are going to be the most, but all three, all 3 pieces of the puzzle.
That's good. Well, as we kind of transition into a different piece of your testimony and your story, you've told us that at one point you were thinking about chasing a career in golf, and then you've told us about how it looked for you in high school and coming to faith in Christ. But when did you feel that call to be called into the ministry from God? When did that start?
Yeah, and I'll do my best to keep it short because we don't need to have a 2-hour podcast. But
we're heading there.
Yeah, the shortest version of events is that, like, 5th, 6th grade, we used to do, you remember on Fifth Sundays, we'd do youth Sundays all the time growing up in these small churches. And so youth would collect the offering, youth would sing, youth would teach Sunday school classes, and somebody had to preach. And so I don't know why I got selected, but they're like, okay, you're going to preach, right?
Oh,
and anyway, so I preached, and I remember a lady by the name of Tammy McCarran comes walking up to me, and the sermon was like 25 points and 5 minutes long.
There you go.
And she walks up and she's like, you can see that God's really gifted you for this. Have you ever thought about this? And I thought, did you hear that 5 minutes, But like it planted a seed.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me think about this.
Yeah.
And I did not have a real close relationship with our pastor. Remarkably, my much closer relationship was with our former pastor at Calvary Baptist, a guy by the name of Mike Anthony. And so somehow, some way, my parents kind of orchestrated that I got an opportunity to sit down and talk to him. And I love Brother Mike. And I sat down with Brother Mike and I told him, hey, I feel like maybe, how do you know? And of course, this is a sixth grader asking these questions, right? Or seventh grade, whatever I was. And Mike could not have been more, what do I want to say? More disencouraging. Mike was like, look, we know you. What good thing cometh from Altamont, Illinois, right? Like you're not called to be a pastor. And so I was like, okay. I wasn't even offended. It was just kind of like, okay, that's fine. And I look back now and there was actually a little bit of wisdom in it because like, if I would tell people thinking about going to the ministry, if you can do anything else in the world, do it. Because ministry is the most satisfying job I think a person can have, seeing people's lives changed, investing in them. And it can also be the most discouraging job in the world because when you, and just speaking about vocational ministry here, because when you help somebody so much and then you see them go down a bad path or they, don't reciprocate that encouragement to you. It can be extremely painful, can be extremely lonely. And so if you can do something else in the world, go do it. You'll make more money, you'll be a lot happier, and so on and so forth. But he very much discouraged me. And so I just kind of let the ball drop, so to speak. And as I rose kind of up the junior rankings in golf in Illinois. I just became very singularly focused on golf. And I earned a full ride scholarship to Texas Christian University, which in the late 90s and early 2000s was it was the place that if you were a men's golfer, you wanted to go and play. And so I earned a full ride scholarship to go to Texas Christian University and play golf. And I was excited about this. Now I have reignited my faith venture, right? My faith journey. I am late in my junior year. I won a really big tournament that summer in between the junior and senior year, and I was on cloud nine. Yeah. And my parents were, upon receiving this, said, "No, you're not going." And I had a partial scholarship opportunity to go play at the University of Illinois, and they're like, "No, you're not going there either." And I said, "Well, where am I going?" Essentially, right? And there were other schools, but those were the two schools that I was like, "Man, I'm going to go do this one of these places." And coincidentally, I owned the Illinois state scoring record for, I think, a very long time. But before we got on this podcast today, I decided I was going to go back and look, and I'm no longer listed on the website, which means either somebody has beat me or they just realized nobody cares about who owns what records in high school golf. But anyway, I was excited. This is where I'm going. My parents are like, "No, not happening." And we had a knockdown drag out, and they're like, "You are going to Southwest Baptist University." And I'm like, "I don't want to go to Southwest Baptist University, but you have to go in our family history here." And my cousin went to Southwest Baptist University. And in their mind, he turned out really good. And so they basically forced my brother to go there. And my brother was a big baseball player, but he was also 5'5". So he did not get a bunch of looks from big schools. But Southwest Baptist University found out he might come. And so they recruited him and he played baseball for them. And so in my parents' mind, maybe because I had been an ornery teenager, you're going to Southwest Baptist University. Your brother will look after you. We know you'll be safe for at least 1 year, and so on and so forth. And so we did what teenagers and parents do. We fought and argued about it, and I went. And you know, midway into that freshman year, like I think I knew before that, but midway into that freshman year, it was clear. It was obvious. Look, I mean, you're at the height of Tiger Woods' dominance. Like the game of golf is expanding at such a way. Like I'm not 6'2". I'm not going to be the longest guy out there. There are people who make careers out of it, like a Justin Leonard or whatever, but I don't have his short game. Like I knew this is not going. I'm going to just go play college, and that's the end of it. And I think for most collegiate athletes, even high school athletes, when you kind of get to that point where you know there's not that next step, you kind of just, what's the point anymore? And if I had the maturity I had when I coached college golf, I would have said to myself, well, yeah, but it's paying for your education. So just enjoy it. Do the best you can at this level and get a good quality education for less money because they're paying you to do it.
Right.
But when you're 18, if I'm not going to do this for a career, then why do it anymore at all? And so it was like literally just kind of be done with it. And my senior year of high school, I had started kind of feeling that sense of, hey, maybe you ought to go into the ministry. There were people who were speaking into my life saying, you have a gifting, you are eloquent with words, you know, fill in the blank, but we see something in you. I started getting opportunities as a high schooler. I would fill the pulpit. Brother Bob had kind of come out of retirement and was serving at First Baptist Vera, Illinois, you know, a church of 20 people. And if he was gone on vacation, hey, come preach for me. I got an opportunity to preach at New Hope at 180 on Saturday nights. I became kind of a mainstay student speaker whenever they would allow students to speak. And so like I was getting all these kind of opportunities. And so you kind of felt like, okay, maybe this is where you're going. But even still as a freshman in college, it was like, yeah, but I don't know that's what I want to do. I don't know that's what I want to do. My dad was a police officer, maybe go into law enforcement, you know, like kind of wanted to be a teacher in some ways because it was stable. I had family that was teachers. But really early on that freshman year, first semester of college, 2001, it just became a heavier and heavier weight of like, why am I not even praying about this? So finally, October 2001, I was going to a Wednesday night ministry on campus, and don't remember what the pastor said, the preacher said that night, but just kind of fell under conviction about that prayer I had prayed as a junior in high school. Whatever you want to do with my life, I'm willing to go. And so basically that night I confessed, admitted that I had not, you know, brought these things before the Lord, that I still had areas of sin in my life that needed to be dealt with. And I basically said, okay, my yes is on the table. And I was so stupid, but I said, if you want me to do this, you're going to have to show me you want me to do this and give me opportunities. And literally the next day, I'm walking through the Redford building coming out of an Old Testament, introduction to Old Testament class. And one of my professors walks by and says, hey, I heard you've done some preaching in the past. Would you be willing to fill the pulpit at this church over here for, a couple weeks while they're trying to figure out what they're going to do?
There you go.
And it was almost like the Lord just said, okay, you said, give me open doors, give me opportunities. Here they are. And really from that moment on, it was like, there's never going to be any looking back. There was no Damascus Road experience where I got knocked off of a horse. You hear people talk about, oh, I felt this burden that it was like a hot skillet to my face. Like, I feel bad for those guys. I didn't feel any of that. It was more like God just shaped my heart and my desires. I always go to Philippians 2:13, for it's Christ in us both to will and to work for his good pleasure. God just put a desire in my heart to open the word, to understand the word, to preach the word. And then second part of that equation, did he gift you? Did he give you the ability? And the only way that's confirmed or affirmed is through the testimony of the church, and countless church folks were so encouraging to me in those years, saying, man, like, it's clear God's called you to do this. Pursue it, pursue it, pursue it, pursue it, pursue it. So I dropped myself as a biology major and became a ministry major January of 2002, or a biblical studies major January of 2002. And I was only a biology major because it sounded really smart. I never intended to be a biology major, but the smart people all did it, so I did it.
Yeah. Kind of transitioning into that, you talk about ministry, but like you said, ministry is hard. It's difficult, but it is so satisfying. And, you think about, if you knew God had put that heavy burden on your heart, if you try to live so many years outside of that satisfaction, you truly never experience, because it's not what God has intended for me to do.
That's right.
And so kind of talking about that, yes, ministry is so satisfying, being able to serve others, and especially when God has placed that in your life, but it's also difficult. And so I know, like, before I came back from college, having you come and share part of your story had been, told to me by my family and all that kind of stuff. And so I know that you've experienced grief, and I know that you've experienced loss, you and your family. You and Miss Kelly have gone through some difficult things.
Yeah,
and so kind of going into that, would you share some of those seasons of y'all's life that y'all have had to walk through?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do the 7-minute version, because I think sometimes we I don't know if we glory in.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to always be careful in the conversation to make sure that we are glorying in Christ.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Kelly and I are not super strong human beings by any stretch of the imagination. I would argue that God gave us strength through different seasons of life. Yeah. I don't, you kind of look back at 43 and 44 and wonder, how did we even survive some of that stuff? But so I'm always, I don't know why. And also, I think God taught us some deep lessons in that, and some of those we just kind of keep to ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Kelly and I get married in 2005, and there's a backstory in what happens next. But basically, she finds out, hey, I've got to stick around for one more semester. So it's fine, but our plans are derailed. Mm-hmm. We end up staying in Bolivar, Missouri, instead of going to Louisville, Kentucky. We come back. We're poor. We're poor married couple. Mm-hmm. I don't even have a job when we get married, and so we come back. And first, I was a telemarketer. That's how I paid for her engagement ring. I sold phone lines for MCI WorldCom, which I don't think even exists anymore. But anyway, so I came back and resumed that job. Hated telemarketing. One of my friends was like, "Hey, look, the guy I work for at Radio Shack is getting ready to make some changes, and he's going to need some employees." I interviewed, and they're like, "Well, how long are you going to be here?" And I'm like, 6 months. And he's like, "I don't care. I'll take you for that 6 months, because I need to make some changes." So I end up getting a job, and everybody but my friend gets fired. Like, the first week I'm there, I end up managing the business, knowing nothing about it.
Wow. But
anyway, so we get to that. We get back, I get that job, we're kind of settling in, and God's, begins to use another pastor in the area in my life. And he's like, "Hey, could you stick around a few months? We just lost our youth director. You could be our youth, director." And I said, "Well, I'm not starting classes till August of next year. So yeah, we could hang around till June, July, whatever." So we make a decision. Hey, we're already here. I've got a good job. Let's just go ahead and stay. I'll make some money and I'll work. Yeah. I'll be a volunteer youth director at Hermitage First Baptist Church for a while. Next thing you know, that turns into, hey, we'd like you to be the youth pastor and we want you to stay around more permanently. And that happens. And so we end up throwing all of our plans out. They're just totally gone, and we're not going to seminary. We're just going to be in Hermitage First Baptist Church, Hermitage, Missouri. During that season, Thanksgiving 2006, my wife and I were married 1 year. She goes to her doctor, and they notice some concerning spots, and it ended up not being that big of a deal, but at 23 years old, you hear that word that begins with a C, and I can vividly remember, like, she's giving me the news in our living room, and like so lightheaded that I almost passed out. Like it literally shook me to my core. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As it turned out, it was, not that big of a deal. It all worked out in God's providence, but at the same time, the doctor said, hey, I know a lot of young couples decide they're going to wait for a while, but you guys might consider bumping up that timetable. And so pretty much immediately after that first year, it's like, okay, well, let's work on having a kid. Yeah. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't come to fruition. 2007 comes and goes. 2008 comes and goes. 2009 comes and goes. By this point, we've now moved on to pastor at Cornerstone Baptist in Sedalia. 2010, finally, December of 2010, or November of 2010, my wife is like, "Hey, we're pregnant," and like, so it's been 4 years of trying and not happening, and all of a sudden it just kind of happened. And to be honest with you, at that point, we just kind of given up and thought, probably isn't going to happen. But anyway, and by the way, it was November 23rd, 2006 when the first health issue comes up. It was November 23rd, 2010 when she finds out that she's pregnant.
Wow, that's cool.
And so God kind of has a funny way of reminding you that He's in charge. Yeah. We go to her family for Thanksgiving. She was already like 11, 12 weeks pregnant by that point, but because of the other issues, like didn't know. Yeah. And so like we're almost through the first trimester, and we go ahead and tell everybody, hey, we're pregnant. We come back from Thanksgiving and we go in for the first trimester screening and find out that we're not having one child, we're having twins. And we're like, holy cow, now we got to call everybody back and be like, hey, it's not one, it's two. And so, of course, at this point, we're 12 weeks, we're okay with telling people. So we tell people at church that had prayed, everybody kind of knows. And she goes in for that screening on Thursday, Sunday afternoon after church. Phone rings, and it is her doctor who says, hey, I saw a problem on the screening, on the ultrasound. Want you to come in and see me tomorrow. So all the doctors out there, don't call your patients on Sunday afternoon and tell them there's a problem and you can't get them in for 24 hours. Just wait till Monday morning and call them, right? Because all that did was send her and myself to a lesser degree into a state of constant worry for the next 24 hours. So we go in, we find out that there is some sort of issue, but that issue is undefined. Skipping through the next several months, we basically are told that one of these children is not going to make it. We were counseled early on that we should probably terminate one pregnancy for the health and benefit of another. And we didn't do that. We believed God was the author of life. He'd given us this life. And we were just going to entrust Him. And so we go through the pregnancy expecting, problems. We had a few, but mostly it actually smoothed out. We go into the day of delivery, and they're telling us, hey, look, you're not going to meet this little girl. We're going to pull her out. It's a C-section. We're going to pull her out, and we're going to immediately take her into NICU. After everybody else gets done, after, the little boy is taken care of, after your wife's taken care of, we'll get you guys brought over to NICU where you can look at her through the window. And the doctor's like, she's honestly probably not going to make it. So we had made decisions about, this is the health care we want to provide. These are what we don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And instead what happened that morning was exactly the opposite. Isabella comes out screaming. They told us that she wouldn't do that, but she comes out of the womb just screaming and hollering. And Isaiah choked on amniotic fluid, and they immediately begin life-saving procedures to save his life. So the healthy child is not healthy, and the unhealthy child is screaming at the top of her lungs. And then all of a sudden, my wife's blood pressure dropped and heart stopped, and they're bringing defibrillators out and bringing her back to life. And so it's hard to even imagine or even describe that moment. Yeah. But we thought this is how this is going to go, and instead my world is falling apart, and the one child who's not supposed to be healthy, I'm holding in my arms while doctors and nurses are going crazy around me. And as it turned out, Kelly's, heart came immediately back. They got Isaiah over. They immediately shipped him into his little private room, started pulling the fluids out, got him breathing fine. And finally after Kelly was fine, I said, I'm going to go check, I'm going to walk over here and see Isaiah. I'm holding Isabella, showing her to her, And so she gives me kind of a thumbs up. I walk into the room, and Isaiah's just kind of laying there, kind of lifeless, And but they told me he was fine, but he's just kind of laying there. And so I just reached over him with my hand, and I said, thank you, Lord. Thanks for getting us to this point. Keep him safe now, right? And as I turned around and picked up my hand, he reached up.
Wow.
He reached up and grabbed my hand. And that night, here's 4 of us in a room, not supposed to be happening. All 4 of us in a room, each of us holding kids, And I mean, just exciting. What happens next 6 months, we're in NICU. Fast forward through that, but it culminates in the day after Kelly's birthday, almost 2 years later, March 26th. I guess it would be 2013. We woke up and Isabella had passed. And we, unlike many parents who were very, who get shocked at the loss of a child, we knew that day was coming. We didn't know it was coming that day. It was a surprise. She'd gotten a cold the day before, and so we always knew that was dangerous. But when she went to bed that night, she seemed fine and everything was good. And Kelly actually went in and picked her up. That morning, and she was still breathing. I was in the shower. Kelly picked her up, and she kind of was startled when she picked her up because Isabella, because of her condition, was blind and deaf. And so when she picked her up, she kind of startled her, which is not unusual. But she kind of startled her and took her last breath and passed. And so Kelly came in and said, hey, I think Isabella has passed. And I'm like, what? And got out of the shower, came in, and sure enough, there was no pulse. And so we grieved. We celebrated the fact that God had given us almost 2 years with this precious life. It was difficult. It was challenging. And yet at the same time, I will say what I said at her funeral service. And what I said at her funeral service was, God was so gracious to me in that, and that he showed me a side of my wife that I didn't ever know. I didn't get to see. I'm kind of the tough guy in the room that's like, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and always directionally on point. And my wife has just kind of rolled with those punches all those years. There's never an opportunity to kind of whine or complain about something didn't work out. You're just going to roll with the punches and take it on. And God showed me a different side of my wife. And I always illustrate that side she was over a year old, and we had built a new house, and we'd moved in, and Kelly wanted to decorate Isabella's room. Mm-hmm. And when she went to decorate Isabella's room, she spent countless hours cutting out these butterflies, and she put them all over the wall. Typical man. I thought, man, how stupid, right? I mean, like, Isabella can't see, she can't hear. Like, why go to these levels? Just put the crib in the room and her medical devices and whatever, And after Isabella passed, that day we were sitting talking, and I said, hey, never really asked you, but why did you do all that? Like, why go to those great lengths? And Kelly, just with a confidence and strength I was not expecting, just looks at me and is like, well, I imagine it's what heaven looks like. And I want her to recognize the place when she gets there. So, through those things, God shows you your spouse, shows you your partner. And so we more than grief, we were thankful for it. We just celebrated those moments. And then beyond that, we have Zariah next. There's a number of issues along the way in that pregnancy. Zariah had to get a blood transfusion in utero, but God provided. Mm-hmm. The only doctor in a 3-state area that could do it happened to be our high-risk pregnancy doctor, Dr. Wynn. Then we lost a child, Jonathan Jordan, 26, 27 weeks. It's a terrible time to lose one because you've already got your room set, you've got names picked out. Like, you're in the closing stretch, right? And then you actually have to deliver a child that you're not going to take home with you and all of that. But his name, Jonathan Jordan, friend of God, Jordan crossover. So he was the friend of God that passed over. So we went through those phases, and we're confident. We celebrate even those difficulties, those challenges, because we know that, as David said, they'll no longer come to us, but one day we'll go to them. I have no doubt that Isabella, Jonathan Jordan, first time their eyes opened, their ears opened, they saw the face of Christ. They heard the voices of angels and saints. So we're, like for us, it was tough, but it was okay. It's just the road that God gave us. And it helped us in ministry. It helped us be bonded together as a couple, but it also, when other people in church went through situations, I knew kind of where they were at. Right. I knew what to say. I knew what not to say. I knew how to kind of react in the moments, because a lot of people try to help, but they are no help at all. And so I think God maybe gave us some of those experiences so that we can maybe help others.
Awesome. It's good stuff. It's hard.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's right.
The way God used it. And it's continued to use it, just like you said, the way that you can connect with people now on a totally different level and all. Well, let's transition just a little bit more.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And so Blakely, Georgia, like at that time you're in Sedalia. And,
not on my bingo card.
Not on your bingo card.
Did you put it on the card at all?
No.
So
no.
So just tell us, like, what was the journey like going from being in Sedalia at Cornerstone for almost 15 years?
15 years, yeah. We were in our 15th year.
Yeah,
Wow.
And then all of a sudden you find yourself in this corner of Georgia, right? I mean, it's just like it is the middle of nowhere for most folks. So just tell us how that journey came to be about.
Yeah. So, I think when you're at a church for 15 years or in your 15th year, the safest thing you can do is stay right there because most everybody who's there likes you.
Yep.
They're not going to cause you problems. The people who don't like you are not there anymore. You also, I think you feel like after 15 years, I don't want to start over. I don't want to do things again. And yet all of those things for me and my particular personality are almost strikes against it, because the idea of sitting around and doing nothing or just repeating the same thing for the next 20 years of my life just sounds terrible to me. I mean, I want to just take the next step forward, whatever that step is, right? And, how it came about was rather simple and yet complex at the same time. It was simple in that, an individual in this church, Brad Hughes, I had known all the way back since 2002, sends me a text. I think it was on our anniversary. I think it was July 2nd. I was preaching that Sunday before we took off out of town for a week. And he said, "Hey, our pastor at First Baptist Blakely," which I only knew that he lived in Blakely. I didn't know where Blakely, Georgia was. I knew nothing about Blakely. Yeah. But he says our pastor just preached his last sermon, and we're going to be looking for a new pastor, and we've decided not to hire an interim, and therefore I'm trying to get some of my friends to come fill the pulpit. And I know you guys like to travel to Florida, so what Sunday could you come and preach? Yeah. And I said, well, what's funny is, we're an hour ahead down here. So I am sitting in the front row of my church getting ready to go up and preach while he's texting me.
Right.
And I'm like, well, actually, coincidentally, Kelly and I are taking off for Florida this week. And so, I could preach next Sunday. And he's like, well, I already got somebody there. And I was like, okay, well, just throw me a couple dates and we'll work it out. Right. And then somehow it didn't really work out until the date that was picked was October the 2nd, I think, or October 3rd. It was the first Sunday of October. And in the interim, like a month goes by and he sends me a text and he's like, hey, I think that you should pray about coming and being our pastor. Now, again, I don't know where Blakely's at. It's in Georgia. That's all I know. Yeah. I know nothing about the church. I know nothing about the people, except I know one person, Brad Hughes, right? Yeah. That's all I know. And I have a high amount of respect for Brad. And at that moment, I'm like, well, if he thinks I ought to consider it, maybe I should consider it. But I'm still sitting there thinking, I'm not leaving. And so I basically kind of gave a cursory, no, we're good. Appreciate you thinking of me. It's nice to feel wanted, but no. And then I came down and preached in October, and I get done preaching, and we go to his house to eat lunch. We stop at the gas station to get lunch. Yep. First for me in my lifetime, getting lunch from gas station.
Wasn't the last, though, was it?
No, it wasn't the last. But we grab lunch, we head to his house, and we pull into his house, and there's all of these vehicles there. And I'm like, this is strange. And I commented, hey, this is strange. And he's like, well, people come over every week for lunch, and okay. So we go inside, and it became apparent very quickly that basically the pulpit committee and their spouses were the people who were at his table having lunch. And what I didn't know was that he had been telling them behind the scenes, I have this one friend who I really think ought to be a really good fit for our church, and this is who we ought to pursue. I didn't know any of that because I had just said, cursory, no, I don't think that's going to work. Yeah. And, but I figured out very quickly that Sunday, hey, these people are asking questions for a reason. Yeah. And so after everybody left, nobody came out and said, hey, this is an interview or anything like that. But after they left, I looked at Brad and I said, that was pulpit committee, wasn't it? And he says, you betcha. And he just keeps on walking. And so we talked a little bit, and I told him when I left, I stayed a couple extra days. I told him when I left on that Tuesday morning, I said, look, I could live here. Like it makes sense. It kind of feels like it's going back home to my roots. I could live here. But I'm one vote in this family, and Kelly has never lived in a town smaller than 25,000 people, I don't know what she would think. And I was like, it would be a massive haul for us to even consider coming. And so, but I said, I will not lie this time, and I will actually pray about it and get back to you. And I hopped on a plane in Dothan, and I landed in Atlanta, flew from Atlanta to Kansas City. And when I landed in Kansas City, my phone rang about 20 minutes later. Mm-hmm. And it was Dr. Bennett. Brad had given Garrett my phone and number, and he was calling me, and he talked to me all the way from Kansas City back to Sedalia, about an hour and 30 minutes from the airport. Talks to me the whole way and basically says, I want you to really think about this. And we talked about a number of issues. And he's like, look, we see how our people have responded to many of the different pastors that have been here this year. We think like you really ought to consider this. And honestly, we don't want to keep looking through interviews or resumes if you're interested. And I was like, well, I said, give me 48 hours. Give me a little bit of time to think about this, pray about this. And I walked in the house, and it's probably midnight, 11:30, whatever. And Kelly had waited up for me, and which was a chore for her because she goes to bed at like 8:00. And she's like, "Well, how was the trip to Blakely?" And I was like, "It was great. It's a small town. It feels like going back to Mayberry. I met the judge, the sheriff, and the chief of police all today at breakfast, sitting at Smitty's." And she's kind of laughing and smiling about all this. And then I kind of dropped the bomb, and I was like, "They'd like me to consider giving my resume and maybe being the pastor down there." And she was like, "Yeah, that's wonderful. No, we're very happy, satisfied, blessed where we're at." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And I honestly thought at that moment, well, wait 48 hours so they think that you really thought about it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We went to bed. The next morning we got up and we're sitting there at 6:00 in the morning, having a cup of coffee, and Kelly looks at me and she's like, apparently has been distraught at sleep all night because she was so dismissive. And she says, "Hey, if you really want me to think about this, if you really want me to consider this, I need to see the town." And I said, "Well, that's fair." I said, "Well, when you want to go?" And she's like, "Well, that's the problem." So this is like Wednesday morning. She's like, "Our fall break starts tomorrow. And I have parent-teacher conferences tomorrow, but I've got Friday and Saturday available, and then I'm not free again till Thanksgiving. And at Thanksgiving time, we're going to go see my folks, so, that's out of the question. So maybe at Christmas time, we could go look at it." Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, it's October the 5th. Like, you can't ask this church to sit around and wait till Christmas time to see if you're interested, right? And I said, "Well, let me see what it looks like in flights." And so I'm on phone on Wednesday looking for flights on Thursday night or Friday. And there were 2 seats left on an Allegiant airline flight from Springfield, Missouri to Destin. And it was like, okay, let's do it. And so I called Garrett and I was like, "Man, like, my wife said that before we make any type of decision about even submitting our resume, like, she wants to see the place. So here's what let's do. I know it's short notice, but we're going to get there like Thursday night, like real late. We'll see you Friday morning, and you've got us Friday and Saturday. I've got to get back to church by Sunday. You're going to see us Friday and Saturday. Get your pulpit committee together. If they have any questions, I want them asked now. I want to just go ahead and get this thing over with." Yeah. And then have some ladies maybe take Kelly around, show her the school and stuff like that. And he's like, "Okay, we're going to make it happen." Mm-hmm. And so this all happens in like a 2-day span, essentially. And he's like, "We're going to make it happen. We'll cancel any plans we've got. We're just going to make this happen." And so we did. We flew down, and they were like, "Now we got to be really careful because if anybody sees you still around town, they're not going to know Kelly, but they would recognize you if they see you around town. It's a small town. They're going to start jumping to conclusions. It's going to put pressure on our church, on our pulpit committee. You were very beloved, so it'll put pressure on us. People are going to want to know, hey, is this who you're interviewing? What was this all about?" Yeah. He's like, "So we're going to do all this under the cover of darkness." And so they literally basically hid me out for 36 hours, and I just hid. Every meal was in Dothan or in Albany or somewhere away from town. Kelly was taken around, but nobody knew who she was, so that was okay. And then we got out of town, and Garrett called me as we were sitting in the Destin airport, and he was like, look, our pulpit committee doesn't really want to look any further. We are fully convinced you are the right person. There's no point in wasting everybody's time. So the ball's kind of in your court. You make a decision, and you see how the Lord leads. And so, again, I said, give me 48 hours. And so we pretty much knew before the plane left Destin we were coming to Blakely, but we wanted to pray about it. We didn't tell our kids anything. So then it was like, well, when do you come in view of a call? And we picked the first part of the Thanksgiving break because nobody would notice us being gone. But we had discussed none of this with our kids.
Right.
So we literally loaded up to come down here in view of a call and told our kids as we were driving to the airport, Dad might be taking a new job. We might be moving 4 states away. And so anyway, yeah. But God was gracious. He melted my heart towards serving in Blakely, melted my wife's heart towards serving in Blakely. We believe that our gifts matched up with First Baptist Blakely's needs.
Yeah.
And I told our folks at Cornerstone that God didn't call me to stop loving them. He just called me to stop being their pastor. We felt like our gifts no longer aligned with where their needs were as a church. Phenomenal people, phenomenal church. We're so thankful for them and the opportunity to invest in us and let us invest in them for 15 years. But we just knew that God had melded us for this moment, that He had molded us, our giftings for the service in this local church. Yep. And so it happened quickly. God had to move a lot of mountains. I was coaching at the college. My wife was the director of education. I sat as a board member at the college. There were a lot of things that had to kind of come together. And we thought, honestly, it would take 6-8 months. And instead, God put it together in a month and a half. Yeah. And so
I remember
we have
thinking,
not looked
man,
back.
That was quick.
Yeah,
it was November when we called you, and then you were here in January.
That's right. That's right.
That's
right.
Man.
Did you ever have like another church sort of ask you to put in a resume, like other opportunities to come about?
Yeah, I mean, lots of times.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years, in Sedalia, God was very gracious to us. We were able to grow. Our budget went up. Our buildings started, we started building buildings. Anytime you start doing those things, I mean, word tends to get around. Yeah. And so... there were a number of churches over the years that said, "Hey, would you give us your resume?" But Blakely was where we were supposed to be. Yeah, and to be honest with you, there was only one other church that we ever considered pastoring while we were at Cornerstone. A few years before that, Hermitage First Baptist, where I'd served as an associate, was looking for a senior pastor. They asked us. We considered that, prayed about it, ultimately just did not feel like that was where the Lord was leading for a variety of reasons. But but our hearts were very much inclined towards them because we loved those people so much. Yeah. But that was the only church. I've only ever given my resume, interviewed with, 1, 2, 3, 4 churches in my life. And I was lucky to serve at all 4 churches. And so, I'm not the pastor. I'm not against this, but I was not the guy who sent out my resume to a whole bunch of churches and hoped that one of them picked me up. Yeah. Right. We went to Sedalia because somebody referred them to us. They reached out to us and said, we think, we'd like to talk to you. And one thing led to another, and we were there. We went to Hermitage because we were referred to them by their pastor. We met with them. Same thing with Coon Creek before that. So we've been fortunate, and God has planted us and allowed us to stay longer every step along the way. And so buckle up, First Baptist, because, if the trend continues, you'll have me for 30 years because it doubles every time.
Speaking of that, it's been over 2.5 years now.
That's right.
And it has been, there's a lot that's happened, a lot of growth, a lot of challenges that we've faced. But the Lord has been more than faithful in all of that.
Yeah, that's right.
But where do you see, or what do you see the vision being as we continue moving forward as a church?
Yeah, it's such a tough question because as these guys know, we've had a number of staff meetings where we've had internal conversations. I think you have to program a ministry, so to speak, first and foremost under the authority of Scripture, and therefore under the Lord's leadership, right? We're not going to ever program a ministry outside of the boundaries of Scripture. We're going to do what Scripture organizes a church to do. So as I enter into the discussion, I don't want anybody to think that we're unspiritual in these. We believe that Scripture is clear about what a church is, what it's supposed to be, what you're supposed to be doing, and we're going to always organize ourselves around that. That's fundamental. And so every church, their purpose, their ministry, their mission is to proclaim Christ. Yeah. The question is ultimately, how do you do that in your particular context? And for us, when we were at Sedalia, there's 82 churches, but nobody has any youth ministry going on. It became very abundantly clear, hey, we need to centrally focus on reaching the next generation, and we specifically define that as 12 to 15-year-olds, and by extension, 15 to 20 and 9 to 12. But we wanted to really key in on that demographic and say we're going to reach these kids, thereby their parents, 30 to 45-year-old parents. We're going to do that.
Yeah.
When I came to Blakely, some might say, oh, well, just carbon copy what you did up here and it'll work. The problem is that doesn't really work. The demographic of Blakely is different. And you guys know this because we've talked about it. We know that our job is to proclaim Jesus. We also know that there's great value here in this culture in being family oriented. I hate to say this because if the Lord wants to do this, we will gladly accept it and celebrate it. But we're not trying to have a church of 5,000 people. It's not our ambition. It's not our target. It's not what we're aiming at, right? We're not concerned about the numbers at all. What we're concerned about is faithfulness first and foremost. But we also know that in this culture, people want to be family oriented. They like being invested in one another. And 100%. So it was clear and easy to come up with a vision statement of First Baptist exists to proclaim Christ from generation to generation, which means that we're going to be a church that is about the business of making sure we're passing the faith on from one group to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Yeah. That works out in a Titus 2 practical biblical church where you have older teaching younger, and there's always something going on for essentially every demographic. Right? Now, where it gets complicated is when you look at a demographic, a city demographic, trying to figure out where your focal points need to be, how you want to design everything from the style of music that you play to what your building looks like, to, just silly things that a lot of folks don't really think about, carpet, pews, or chairs, like all of those things. And while all of those are personal preferences, while they're personal ideas, they matter as you're trying to reach people for Christ.
Exactly.
And so what I always have said is, it's not a phrase I came up with. It's been around since Jesus probably, but you run the race with the horses you have. If you don't have horses to run a particular race, you don't try to run that race, right? You don't take a golf team to play basketball. You don't take a basketball team to go play golf. You take a golf team. So when you come in and paint a vision for a church, you have to understand the demographic of the area that you're trying to reach with the gospel and shape your ministry around that reality. If all of the young people are fleeing Blakely, but Blakely is growing in early retirees, then a focal point of our ministry has to be towards early retirees. And so I think one of the things that's a challenge here is that over the last 2.5, we're working on 3 years, is I think as a staff, we're still trying to figure out the nuts and the bolts. We have a general conception. We have some generalized ideas about some things, and we're moving forward. But I think we're still trying to figure out some things as well, because quite frankly, Blakely is changing.
Yeah.
You know, it has been in decline for a number of years, but according to the United States government census since 2000, it's actually been increasing in Early County in population.
That's right.
Then you deal with the fact that we lost the paper mill, and so that was a significant economic blow. Yeah. But now we're bringing in the data center, and so that's going to be an investment of, I think the number I heard was like $2.2 billion over 10 years, where you have a whole bunch of people outside of Blakely coming into Blakely, and they're going to become Blakelyans for 10 years because they're going to be here working. So you're almost going to experience that kind of ministry that you experience next to an Air Force base, where you have people that are coming in for a couple of years and then going out. Well, you know, Jesus called us to minister to them as much as he did anybody else. And so like, I think there's a number of questions that we're still trying to work through to answer the questions about the mechanics of that vision. But ultimately, 30,000 foot view, we want to be a people who are passing the faith on from generation to generation, equipping, sending saints out, that if our students graduate Early County High School and decide they don't ever want to come back, hopefully First Baptist prepared them and equipped them to become a really good church member in Atlanta, in Athens, wherever they're at, where they will serve and they will pass the gospel on, right? And so 30,000 foot view, we want to just be a church that is balanced, that is spreading the gospel, proclaiming Christ, and just passing it on from generation to generation.
Amen. And I mean, it's been great just being a part of that process over the last couple of years. I mean, like we said, we're seeing growth. We're seeing new families come in, and some coming back, kind of deal and all. And it's just been a blessing to be a part of that and watch what God is doing and just being thankful to be a part of it.
Yeah, we got a 200-year history.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Good stuff. Well, any last minute things you want to say? Because we
no, I think we're pushing the hour and 45-minute mark here, so I'm pretty certain that Jack Watson has broken this into 7 parts.
Probably so. I was already sitting here thinking, do we need to do a part 1 and part 2?
Yeah, we do. So if you're, Jack, if you're getting off the treadmill for the 4th day, I appreciate you staying with us all 4 days to break this into segments. But no, these guys, you all know it, but I'm just thankful. I'm thankful that God would be so gracious to allow my wife and I to come and serve the people of First Baptist Blakely, the community of Blakely. There are challenges in our cities, things that we need to do. I think that a strong, vibrant church is good for a city. And I hope that First Baptist Blakely begins to fill maybe a void that has existed for a while. Yeah. I'm thankful for the staff that God has allowed me to serve with, to work with. I've had good staff everywhere I've been that have worked well with me, but I'm thankful for this group of people. And, I keep trying to make y'all give me a 10-year commitment so that I know that I don't have to worry about anything for 10 years. Tanner's like, I think mine was only 2. That's right. Yours was 2, but theirs was 10. No, but I'm thankful for the people God has allowed me to serve with here, the people that he continues to bring in. We are not motivated by continuing to just try to get more and more people here. What we hope we're doing is passing the faith on, giving the faith on, and we're preparing a few more folks to keep passing that faith on. Because one day, Bradley and I are going to retire, and Cam and Tanner will still be serving here in the ministry. And we're going to sit back in the back, and we're going to, encourage and be good church members. And I want my kids to be at First Baptist Blakely 30 years from now. I want them to be serving and taking the leadership roles on and making Blakely home. I want them to experience life in other places and come back. I want them to do that because we love Blakely. God has knitted our hearts, melded our hearts together with Blakely. And so what a privilege to be a part of this moment in history, in Blakely's history.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. And we are more than grateful to have y'all here. Yeah. It's been a blessing
That's right.
to have your family here and just build that friendship. It's more than it's It's not a boss. I don't know. I never really felt like you were a boss, I guess.
If I am, I'm a pretty bad one. So.
So
Amen.
No,
it's a partnership and a privilege to be in ministry together with you.
No,
Appreciate that, guys.
We are
It
thankful.
sure is.
Yeah.
Especially first time in the ministry.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that is a challenge here is looking around the table and like realizing that like Bradley's got me by a year, but we're basically the same age. And even when you include support staff and stuff like that, it's like, oh, I've got a 22-year-old right here. Have you crossed 30? 29?
No. I'll be 29 this year.
20. Yeah. So 20, I got 28 sitting here. We've got a Steven Jackson over here who's 25, 28. And I mean, I just work my way around the table and it's like, how did I become the old person in the room? Like,
I ask myself that every day
We
when I
weren't
walk
really
in the
prepared.
office and I'm the oldest man here.
I like to remind you too.
I mean,
does.
I keep begging y'all to be in the young adults ministry, but y'all just keep kind of saying y'all
I mean,
aren't young.
we were doing
in
the
middle
debate
of
about
those
we
now.
got to go to that forever young
Forever
thing the
young.
other night. I was like, this is something that we definitely name a ministry for people who are older that don't want to yet acknowledge it.
Well, I was telling somebody that I was inviting them to come out, and I was like, listen, this is for the people that realize that the 80s was the best decade
Yeah.
this country has ever seen.
I mean, you had AC/DC.
Well, that too. All the hair bands, it's
Yeah.
good stuff. That's when the Ninja Turtles came out.
Oh boy.
This was before the big hair of the 90s.
That is true.
This was
Yeah.
before Nelly though.
Can't have everything. That's right.
All right. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us today. It's been a privilege to get to sit down with Pastor Guffey. And Pastor, that sounds weird.
Yeah, don't say that
So,
again.
with Chris.
PC.
Reverend
PC.
Pastor
With the
Reverend
right
Guffey.
Reverend Chris Guffey. But it's been fun today. Hope you've gotten something out of it. And I just look forward to the days ahead of being part of First Baptist Blakely and proclaiming Jesus from generation to generation. So we'll see you next time.